I was in my suit and tie and fancy shoes, and I was in the elephant barn, mucking out the stalls.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hello, 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 and welcome back to the podcast whose host keeps mentioning red pandas in interviews at zoos that don't even have them. The Rossifari Podcast. That's right, y'all. We are still going through the amazing experiences that I got to have while I was gigging down in Florida earlier this year. And there are no red pandas at zoos in Florida, but boy, they do keep coming up in these interviews. Kind of crazy. It's also crazy that by the time this episode is out, my time at Northern Stage in Vermont will have come to an end. Yep, another gig down, but man, it's hard to believe that, especially since I'm still releasing episodes from my last gig. Florida was so good to me, but don't you worry, New England has been good too, and you will hear some episodes from up here in the near future. And as for what's next for me, well, I'll be doing Million Dollar Quartet some more. First, back out on the national tour, which is going out in just a little under a month, I believe. And then I'll be spending the winter doing it in Wilmington, Delaware at Delaware Theater Company. I'm really excited to keep getting to do this show and be back. It still just feels so good to be back after the insane hiatus that COVID wrought upon the theater and music industries. And yeah, I'm feeling good about all the things, and I kind of just wanted to let you know that. Because I like you. Because we're friends, right?
No.
Hey. Nobody asked you, Ren. And look, if you don't get that little joke right there, you really need to make sure that you go back and listen to the most recent episode of Zoo News. It's the episode from September 10th, and I guarantee you want to listen to it because along with all the cool, zoo and conservation news stories, it definitely features the birth of a new sound effect, the one that you just heard. And if I say so myself, I think it's pretty hilarious. And I might as well take the time, since we're talking about a recent episode, to remind you to hit subscribe if you haven't yet. Give the show a 5-star rating and possibly even write a review, especially if you're using the Apple Podcast app or iTunes. It really helps people find the show. And of course, make sure you're following along on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Rossifari, on TikTok at RossifariPod, and the website's rossifari.com. Also, if you'd like to support the podcast financially, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. You get cool things, I get funds that go into keeping this bad boy rolling. Plus, anyone who's a patron of the show is automatically allowed to tell everyone that you're my friend. And finally, if you don't want to or can't support the pod financially, but are wondering what you can do to support me with it, hey, you could always, put a little post up on the social medias, let people know about it. Word of mouth does a lot of good for podcasts. And my ego. So today I am bringing you not one, but 2 interviews from the Central Florida Zoo. Now, the Central Florida Zoo, you will be shocked to learn, is located in Central Florida. And it's a really cool place. It's one of those very naturalistic looking zoos. Lots of really beautiful landscaping, as well as really cool and different enclosures. I really enjoyed my time there. Even though it was a little rushed because I had an absolutely crazy day that day. But you'll hear about it. You'll hear about it in the episode. But I was able to sit down with 2 awesome people and bring those interviews to you. The first of them is the director of the Central Florida Zoo, Stephanie Williams. And the second is the senior hoofstock keeper, Chris Torge. Whenever I end up doing an episode that features not one, but 2 interviews, It's my hope that I can make it really show different sides of the zoo and the industry in general. And I feel like this episode really accomplishes that well. Stephanie and I talk about all kinds of stuff dealing with leadership and running a zoo and different things that you have to think about when you're at the top of a zoo. We don't talk about a ton of animals, but don't worry, you do get your poop story. And then Chris and I are just nerding out about animals. Although I will tell you, we do also talk about leadership a bit. As y'all know, that is a topic I am incredibly passionate about. But yeah, in this episode, you are going to get to hear about a very special rhinoceros, a couple of really cool giraffes, some amazing information about an eastern indigo snake conservation project that's being done at the zoo, and so much more. Also, before Chris worked at the Central Florida Zoo, he actually spent time working at Disney's Animal Kingdom. So, I did a little prying. We talked a little bit about what that experience was like as well. All in all, I think there's a lot of really cool stuff in these two interviews, and I'm excited to share them with you. But first, I'll share this ad. Today's episode is brought to you by Daydreamers Studios. Do you have stories and expertise to share with the world? Have you ever thought about starting your own podcasts? There's no better time to start than now with the help of a trusted production partner. Daydreamer Studios is a full-service production company that takes all the stress off your plate. You can focus on creating engaging content while they focus on recording, editing, audio engineering, hosting, and publishing on 22 platforms. Log into the advanced remote system with one click, and the Daydreamer team will be on the other end, ready for you to record everything you have to say. Owned and operated by Daydreamer Network, Daydreamer Studios continues on the company's mission to empower storytellers of all kinds by making podcasting accessible to all. For more information and current promotions, visit daydreamernetwork.com/studios. All right, let's get ready to spend some time at the Central Florida Zoo with Stephanie Williams and Chris Torge. Oh, and to save time, I decided to play both interviews simultaneously, so enjoy.
My name is Chris
Stephanie
Torge.
Williams.
I am
the zoo director.
Okay, I kid. We're going to start with the interview with Stephanie, so here we go. All right, so why don't you tell me who you are, where we are, and what you do here?
Perfect. My name is Stephanie Williams. I am the zoo director for the Central Florida Zoo and Botanical Gardens, and we are located in Sanford, Florida.
Yeah, it's very exciting to be here. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's a great zoo. I had a really lovely time walking around.
Awesome.
Yeah, I dig it. So it is my understanding that you have been here for a lot of time and worn a lot of hats, although I now see that you're not wearing any hats. So,
right.
I was hoping for a big director hat.
Oh, man, yeah. I usually have my baseball hat on.
So tell me about your time here. What all have you done?
Yeah, so I started back in 99, and I was a zoo teacher, which is part of our education department.
Okay, so tell me about zoo teachers. That's
so
cool.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun doing that role. We teach all of the school programs during the year. So any type of field trip, we will teach those programs that are on site, as well as we travel to the schools. So if the school can't come to us, we go to them. We bring animals to the schools. And then during the summer, like right now, we're teaching summer camp. So that position is basically year-round education all day.
Nice. So I have a question for you, because I hear about those types of roles a lot. And now that you've both been in that role and now oversee everything, I'm curious. I know that most keepers end up with like a degree in biology, and I know that not education. So how do you go about finding or training keepers to be good at that side of things?
The teaching side, it comes, I think, with just naturally being able to go out there and do it. And so one of the roles that all of our keepers participate in is education chats, shows, encounters, It might be a VIP tour for a board member or a community leader. And so it just naturally, you work with your seniors in the department and you kind of grow into talking to folks. But it is one of the things that we do look for in the job interview is your ability to interact with folks. We want to make sure that our keepers and our animal staff, regardless of what department, you're wanting to interact with the visitors that are here.
I love that because there's the rumor, and it has been squashed a lot. A lot of people I've talked to on this podcast have already said this, but it bears repeating. You can no longer just be an animal person hiding from people and have an active role as a zookeeper at most facilities because you need to educate. You need to at least be able to get over it to show that passion, right?
Correct. Yeah. So one of the things that we're going to ask is, how do you feel about talking with the public? How do you feel? We may not put a microphone on you. We may not put you on a stage in front of thousands of people, but we're going to ask you to go out. And if you're outside and you're walking through the park, you need to be comfortable talking to folks and answering questions.
That's cool. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And that it's those encounters that led to this podcast. You know, me talking to keepers at various zoos and them saying such cool stuff that I was like, someone should be recording this. I have gear.
Yeah, they have a lot of knowledge and a lot
Absolutely.
of behind the scenes and history, especially with the animals that they work with. So it's really neat to kind of take the time to do one-on-one with them.
Absolutely. Very cool. So you started off there and then talk me through the next step.
So then the next step was our volunteer manager. So I helped to oversee the volunteer department, which is we rely so heavily on our volunteers that help from guest interactions to special events to group projects. So I did that for a little bit and moved on to the education manager role for the department, and then the director role for the department, and now zoo director. So.
Awesome. That's really cool. And you must love it here.
Yes.
So tell me what it's like seeing this zoo grow for that long, because so many keepers bounce from facility to facility. Mm-hmm. And then when they get their dream job, they stay in it forever. Yeah. So I think you have some unique perspective here. What was this place like in 99 compared to now? And how much growth have you seen? How much change have you seen? All that good stuff.
Yeah, it's been, so the footprint has remained the same, but what's happened within the footprint has been exciting to see changes. When I first started, we didn't have the splash ground. And then, a few years and that was built, and to see the families love and enjoy it. And we recognize now we need like 3 of them because it gets so crowded in the summertime. But that's been the fun of it. And then seeing different habitats, they'll change over time, and you'll get animals that will leave and new animals will come in, and it's okay. Well, what can we do with that space now? If we're not going to have a leopard in it, what can we put inside that space that's suitable for the welfare of the animal? So that part's been exciting to see the changes there.
Very cool. You talk about the splash ground a little bit. And I used to have a real problem with things like trains when they don't go by the animals and splash grounds and stuff like that. Because, first of all, I'm an adult male, and if I accidentally wander into one, people look at me funny. And second of all, because, that space, that could be animals or education or whatever, as I push my glasses up and, feel extra nerdy. On the podcast, I've talked to a couple of people who have changed my mind about it a little bit, but I know not everyone listens to every episode. So tell me why you're bragging about a splash ground at what, to maybe a lot of people listening, should be an educational facility. And why don't you have a red panda there instead? I like red pandas. But, seriously, like what would your answer be to something like that?
So for us, it's important to recognize that it's about the entire experience. And if you look at it from the perspective of a young child who's 3, 4, 5, they may, they're going to come to the zoo with their family. They're going to walk around the zoo. They're going to get to see animals up close, but they also want to have these fun experiences. The splash ground allows for that creativity, that fun, the energy. But then it makes that experience the whole day. So you remember the different pieces of it. You remember seeing your favorite animal, but you also remember getting to play in the water when it was 90 degrees outside, right? And riding the train. So many people love the train. It goes around a nature area, and we do have hide and seek animals around it, but some might say, well, that's not really exciting, but it does go towards our mission, and that it's also revenue generating, right? And so that's very important. All of these experiences that tie into families enjoying an entire day at the zoo helps us to generate revenue so that we can go out and do conservation programs. We can provide more education programs. We can go out into the community and do free programs for groups that may not be able to afford to come to the zoo. So,
right. Makes total sense. Thank you for elucidating that fact. I'm curious. I love to delve into weird things sometimes. So you started as a keeper, right?
I know. Well, just a zoo teacher.
Okay,
yeah,
teacher. Well,
yeah.
so how much? I was going to say. So how much husbandry and stuff did you do?
So for the education department, we have an entire separate animal area. Ambassador animals is what we refer to. And so we do have experience with handling, cleaning up after feeding. It wasn't my full-time job, but I definitely was trained in order to help the staff that does take care of those animals. So I'm trained to work with over 50 animals. They're just the smaller size, from your opossums to your owls to your green-winged macaws to your little inverts like scorpions and hissing cockroaches, which people are like, you work with cockroaches? I'm like, yeah, they're important too. They have their place. And so, yeah, we do get to understand what all goes into caring for those animals, whether it's diet prep, the husbandry aspect, making sure that their habitat has everything that they need, down to providing enrichment for those animals. Even though they're behind the scenes, they still get just the same quality of care that you would see out in the zoo if you were walking around.
So now that you're a director and all fancy and stuff and wearing all those hats, do you miss it? Do you miss like the animal stuff? I know you're obviously you are having a huge impact on the animals that are here, but do you miss actually like being in there and giving a hug to a cockroach or,
Right. Some days, yes. So I will take time to go walk towards the back of the animal ambassador area and say hi to the birds. And every once in a while I get to bring an animal out, which is exciting for a group. Nice. Yeah. So I maintain my training to make sure that if needed, I could, definitely go through. And if someone said, hey, we really need this animal to be brought out to talk to this group, then I'm able to do that. But I do miss it. I miss doing that on a regular basis.
I bet. Yeah. So what's your background? What got you to being an animal teacher and then all these other fancy things?
So I knew I wanted to do ecology, so wildlife ecology. Originally, I thought I wanted to do field work. But I started working for a museum, the University of Florida Natural History Museum, and I worked in their fish department. Yeah, bottling dead fish.
Oh,
yeah.
I bet I found something that you don't miss.
Yeah. So specimens. So we would label the specimens that were being studied, and they would, go into the collection and enter all that information into the computer, right? But I was also asked to formulate some education information for their website and for the department. And so that kind of got me into this education side. I was like, I really like that. And so I went on and got my master's in science ed.
Nice.
And at the same time I was doing my master's, I ended up getting a job here. And so did both at the same time, and just really found that I enjoyed the teaching aspect. But the beauty of it is that I got to work with the animals and also teach about them.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's kind of the dream. If I were ever to hop into working at a zoo, I would want to have the ability to do both, because I'm a performer. I love crowds, but also animals. That's kind of what I try to do with the podcast, obviously. So, that's very cool. So what is the hardest thing about being a zoo director?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's the unexpected. every day there's just going to be something that's unexpected. No day is ever the same. And so you wake up and you think you have your day planned out. And then by, 10 o'clock, it's all gone to. So that's been, I think, a challenging part is you just never know what's going to be expecting. You don't know what's going to happen that day. And some days nothing happens and you're like, wait, what? This was a pretty calm day. I need more of those, but no, it's a lot of fun. I like the unexpected. I really enjoy walking the park and really getting to see everything in action. I don't believe that our role should be sitting at a desk and an office and never step, if you don't step foot into the zoo and you don't see what's happening day to day, how can you improve it and work hard? So.
Now, the flip of that question, what's the best part? What's your favorite part of being a zoo director?
Also the unexpected, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah, no. It's, I really like seeing the changes, but I also enjoy the events, the programming, bringing new things for the community to participate in. So if we're launching a new event, that gets me excited. I'm like, yes, we have new programs. We've got this coming up. I think that's what drives us to move forward.
Makes sense. What kind of thought goes into a new program? Like the first time that you decide to do, I don't know, a boo at the zoo or a brew at the zoo or a poo at the zoo, anything that rhymes with zoo has become a thing, whatever it might be. What kind of thought goes into that? Or is it literally just one of those things where somebody's like, I had an idea and you're like, run with it. See what you can make happen.
I think, normally it's like, okay, what's the logistics look like? How many, are we selling tickets? Is this a free program? Who's it benefiting? How is it going to impact the animals? That's always an important question is, all right, if we're doing an evening event, what's that impact going to look like? On the staff, on the animals, things like that. But also, what's the value to it? Is it educational? It should always have some type of educational piece to it, right? And then how is that going to benefit the zoo? Does it support our mission is another, great question that we're going to want to answer. If it's not supporting our mission, then why are we doing it, right?
Makes sense. So I'm curious. I don't know if you know this, but there are a couple attractions other than this zoo in the same rough area, about 30, 40 minutes away. Mm-hmm. But I drove past this place called the Magic Kingdom and a place called Universal. And, and there are a lot of attractions in this area. Yeah. Are they competition? Are they, do they help by bringing people in? What effect does being in Central Florida have on the Central Florida Zoo other than giving it its name?
Right. And so I wouldn't say, I don't think that we ever really consider it a competition. I think we're in a different category in terms of the attendance that those attractions are going to see. We average between, 280, 300,000 people a year, which is not near as what, some of the other larger area, attractions are going to see. But also we tend to see a lot of locals. So the surrounding counties will come. It's a nice day visit. It's a nice day trip. You can come walk around the zoo, enjoy everything that there is, and it's a good day trip. But we have been seeing a lot more visitors from out of state, from, if they're wanting a break from the larger attractions, our facility is a nice facility to say, okay, I need to take a deep, let's take a break away from the energy that you get from visiting those larger areas and just have a nice stroll around the zoo. It's quaint. I love the old Florida feel to it. It's got a lot of trees with the hanging moss, and it just has this natural Florida feel, which I think is very different from all of the other places in Central Florida.
It absolutely is. Nothing amniotronic talked to me at all today. It was quite lovely. Yeah. But beyond that, I was actually going to ask, so this is a very... I want to come up with a term for this because there are certain zoos that are like this. Central Florida is like this. Nashville is like this. But it feels like an indoor-outdoor zoo in the sense that even though you're outdoors, you're under a canopy of trees and it's beautiful. And there's a lot of the pathways are like old wooden bridges, not old in a bad way, but like old school looking,
right?
Obviously new and safe, but and it's very cool and very different. I was curious how intentional that is.
So we've tried to maintain that feel to it. Will it always maintain it through the future? We try to keep that look and feel to it. But it does become challenging. Wood in Florida does not do well for long periods of time.
Fair.
And also, the standards for zoos and aquariums have changed over the years. Larger habitats, multi-species exhibits. And so as we look to grow our master plan and grow our footprint and add more programs, we're going to have to look at that too. And right. So is that going to, hopefully we'll be able to use the same footprint, modify it, not have to, we don't want to be taking down trees. It has that natural feel. So how do we work with it?
Makes sense. And, speaking of your master plan, how far out do y'all look? And can you tell me anything that's coming next?
Yeah, so we try to plan at least up to 5 years out. And so what are the major projects that we're looking to do within that time frame? Right now, we're looking to redesign our train. So we're bringing in a new train. We're hoping to do a new aviary in the future, so a feeding aviary.
Nice.
So that's exciting. And then we want to modify some of our smaller habitats and kind of encompass them into those multi-species areas that we talked about. That's
really exciting. It's got to be cool to be looking forward to for some of those.
You have to look forward to planning and growing. You can't stay stagnant, right?
Right, absolutely. There are some really great exhibits here, though. The Fossa or Fusa exhibit. I really love the little tunnel between the two areas and stuff. Like, there's some really small and almost subtle, but really nice exhibits here.
Yeah, that was intentional. The tunnel between the two, it also connects to the back area. And so kind of allows for a round robin. Nice. And the animals are able to then be moved from one area to the other so that they're not always in the same space. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So I have a question that might be slightly inspired by real life events. I was walking this zoo maybe 40 minutes ago now, and it was beautiful. Sunny day, not a cloud in the sky that wasn't white. It is pouring out right now. I am regretting leaving my poncho in the car. But these things happen, and this is Florida. So, but what does the weather and the unexpectedness and the suddenness of storms, not to mention in Central Florida, hurricanes? I know we're not right on the coast, but we're about, 40 miles from the coast, I would guess?
Yeah.
What impact does all of that have on your planning and just on the day-to-day of the zoo?
So definitely, planning wise, we always have to take into consideration thunder, lightning. Weather changes very quick around here. And so from the zoo director's perspective, how are we keeping people safe? How are we keeping the animals safe? Our staff safe, right? We do have weather related protocols that we can put into action if we need to. We work really well with the emergency management here in Seminole County, especially if we're going to have severe weather like hurricanes. We have protocols for that. We've got a process that we follow if we need to start shifting animals or moving them to other locations. We can do that. So yeah, it's a big process, weather.
Oh, I bet. I would not, I was down here for Hurricane Elsa, but she wasn't very scary when she hit. But I would actually be fascinated to stand and watch that kind of thing happening. I'm sure it would be scary and terrifying and all the things. But the work that goes into that, I know, must be incredible. And kudos to y'all for making that so seamless all the time.
Yeah, it's we get that question, what's it like, and so we do have, our time leading up to a storm coming in, do we have the extra food on hand? Because we have to think about, okay, so if we're shut down, what do we already have on hand? If transportation, fuel, everything's cut off, nobody can get on property because a tree fell down. What's our process right? And so we do have a ride out team that will stay here, made up from different departments that can help oversee the animals, make sure everything is safe and secure, until we can get the staff. It's safe for everybody to come back onto zoo property, but we've got to make sure we have generators and food and fuel and all of that goes into it.
Yeah, makes sense. Y'all, I've been in Florida for 5.5 weeks, and I mean, I've spent a lot of time here before this. But even with that, I am still literally shocked. I'm staring out the window right now. It is unlike anywhere else. I mean, it is the only semi-tropical area of the United States, and I understand that logically, but this is fascinating. It was 17 minutes ago. It was beautiful, and we started our interview, and now it is pouring. Torrential out there. Yeah. It's really interesting to think about those types of logistics and stuff. Yeah, and
I walked back here, so now I don't want to. I'll keep talking.
So you mentioned it, and it's obviously a huge focus of this podcast and of zoos, and that's why it goes so well hand in hand. But what kind of conservation stuff are you all doing here?
So we have a program called the Orion Center for Indigo Snake Conservation. And so that's one of the largest conservation programs that we're involved with. It has to do with the eastern indigo snake, which is a threatened species. And we are working to reproduce those guys and then helping to re-release them in areas that they have, they're no longer found in. And so that's important for us. It's the eastern indigo snake is a very important animal here in Florida, Alabama, Georgia. They're very important for the ecosystem that they live in. And so that's one of our biggest programs. We also do a striped newt, which, if you look them up, they're super cute.
They really are. Yeah.
So we do that up in North Florida. And then we will partner with other conservation programs like giraffes, rhinos, more leopards, the animals that we have as our SSP, our species survival program animals. We will work then with global conservation organizations, might be raising money for them. It might be, we're not always able, we're a smaller facility, so we can't always send our staff to participate in those types of programs. So one of the things that we can do is educate, hold events, raise money, donate items for those conservation programs.
And do you find that a lot of your staff, even though, like you said, you might not be able to send them, that a lot of your staff also do participate in conservation beyond just the work at the zoo?
Correct. Yeah. So we do have a lot of staff that they've found their, niche and different programs that that they want to be part of. And so they can volunteer their time doing that, or they might, bring that program here to the zoo.
Yeah, that's very cool. So tell me about the eastern indigo snake a little bit more. I love these kinds of stories. This is some of my favorite stuff. So tell me a little bit more about how you're doing that and how that's going.
Sure. Yeah. So we have a facility. It's offsite of the property that we're at today in Lake County. And it's a breeding facility. And so we have both indoor and outdoor areas for them. And so once the snakes are hatched, they will grow there until a certain age where they're able to be released. And so we have these outdoor units where they basically get to learn how to be a snake in the wild, right? And so they get used to the temperature and acclimation of the habitat, and we watch them go through the breeding process. And it's interesting because it's just a facility of eastern indigo snakes, but you grow to really enjoy these animals. They have such unique characteristics about their life and the breeding process that they go through, and the combat. So the males will combat. They'll fight each other for dominance over the female. It's just really, I don't know, kind of interesting.
No, that's awesome. I really love those kinds of things. And as a zoo director, I'll ask you now, I can't speak to your zoo specifically. I've done some research, and I hadn't seen that. But in general, why do you think it is that zoos tend to not publicize that stuff as much as they do? Oh, look, it's our cute rhino's 5th birthday or whatever. Because to me, that stuff is important. And I know that it might not be as cute and as newsworthy, especially when it's a snake. It might not be as cute to a lot of people. Right. I love them, but I know. But to me, I feel like so much of the anti-cap group is just people who don't understand all of the cool stuff that's happening and all of the amazing conservation work being done. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on why, that stuff isn't more promoted and tweeted about and check out these cool pics and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a balance. It's really trying to balance everything that we do and recognizing that you do have folks that are interested in the larger animals and some that are interested in the smaller. And yes, you're right that there's not everybody loves, a snake and why is it important to the ecosystem. So I think it's finding that balance, being able to promote that we do this work and this work and this work. And I would agree that we have to do a better job at it. I even say that myself, like we really need to do a better job at showing and highlighting the work that's done behind the scenes, because when you walk around, you're not seeing everything that goes into our mission and why we're here.
Right. Yeah. There was an article in the New York Times, an opinion piece a couple weeks ago, and I did a whole episode kind of trashing it and talking about nicely, but why I disagreed. But it was very much, it was like, it's time to end zoos and stuff. And she quoted Dan Ash, the president of the AZA, as saying that there are around 50 reintroduction programs in zoos all across the AZA. And I just don't think that can be right. There are so many more, because just in the last year, I think I've heard about 20 to 25 on my podcast. Yeah. And I don't think I just happened to catch half of them. I mean, maybe, but I think the work that's being done is amazing and is so important. And, can we go and release your lovely rhino here into the wild? No, for a lot of reasons, no. Right. But the fact that is happening and that so many places, especially smaller zoos, are focused on fixing stuff in their area, I think is beautiful. It's gotten to the point where when I walk in, like I saw this place, and I saw, okay, this is a smaller zoo. My first thought was, I guarantee there's at least one cool local conservation project here, because that's what AZA zoos do. And right. I knew that there was going to be something cool. And I hope I'm going to keep pushing people as I interview them to keep publicizing this stuff more, because I think it's really cool and really important.
Yeah, I think definitely we're proud that we're able to have a local Florida, conservation project that is tied to our name. I think that, while we can help support global projects, we also have to be working in our own backyards. And so that is definitely important. We have to recognize that it takes everybody. We can't just go release animals into the wild and expect them to be sustainable if the habitat's not sustainable itself, right? And so everybody's got to work together. And we're just really proud that we can help with this species, and then also the striped newt as well.
Right. Yeah, that is just so cool. And y'all, it stopped raining. I don't understand Florida at all. It's crazy. But anyway, we're pretty much at the end of our time, so I will ask you for... It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show. But there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story. Hit me.
All right. I don't know. These, probably like the grossest... I was teaching. I was doing a program. I think it was for 5th graders, and I was carrying like a gopher tortoise, and he just started going like all over. And luckily I had like a napkin or, a tissue or something in my hand, and I just had to I was holding him, and I just like wrapped him in this thing, but I kept on talking. I mean, you don't lose your, right. You just don't lose that, I don't know, your spiel or whatever. You just keep going. But there's been so many different stories. I think, after hurricanes, cleaning kennels and things like that is, vultures are just really not, I don't want to ever clean that kennel again.
Yeah, that's fair. I like the improvised tortoise diaper though.
Right. Yes.
That's pretty great. Awesome.
And from that day forward, I always kept a napkin in my pocket. You only learn once.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. So tell me who you are, where we are, and what you do here.
My name is Chris Torge. I am the senior hoofstock keeper here at the Central Florida Zoo.
Awesome. And Hoofstock is such an, I think, interesting area. It seems that hoofstock keepers are very much their own breed in my experience. That is what I've found so far. So I'm excited to chat about this. But I'm curious, tell me about your start. What made you first fall in love with animals, and why are you a zookeeper?
It's a great question. It's always been a lifelong interest of mine, learning about animals. Like Saturday morning, other kids were watching cartoons. I was watching Wild America and all the nature shows on PBS. So my parents fostered my interest in animals. We always had pets growing up, dogs, cats, fish, birds, turtles, all sorts of stuff. So I knew that animals would be part of my career. So when college came around, I went to school for zoology. So my degree is in zoology, and was able to intern at 2 different places during my schooling. One was at the Central Park Zoo in New York City.
Nice. I love Central Park.
Yes, I got to work with their tropical birds, their penguins, and a little bit with some sea lions. So
Nice.
That was a lot of fun. That was like the summer of 1998. And then a small zoo in upstate New York in Syracuse, the Rosamond Gifford Zoo.
Yes, absolutely.
That's where I got my start. I got my feet wet as an intern, and that was where my first job was.
Oh, that's really cool. What did you do up there?
I was their indoor bird keeper for 2 years, and then a position opened up on their elephant team, and I was kind of lonesome working with the birds. I was the only one in my department besides my manager, so I wanted to work in a more of a team environment, and I knew our elephant team had a lot of respect amongst the people at the zoo and the community. So I went out for it, and I was lucky enough to get that position, and I stayed with the Asian elephant team for a little over 3 years.
Okay, cool. Have you seen the latest expansion to the elephant area up there?
I've seen a lot of pictures and videos, but I have not been able to visit yet.
They did a really, really nice
It's
job.
unrecognizable to me.
It's so
Yes.
gorgeous. Yeah, it's so gorgeous. So what brought you to Central Florida?
More elephants. So while I was at the Rosamond Gifford Zoo working with elephants, they sent me to the Principal of Elephant Management course, which was a week-long course with other elephant professionals where you get to share best practices and learn. And there I met the curator of elephants at Disney's Animal Kingdom. We had a few workshops together, and when I came back to New York, she gave me a call and wanted to know if I'd come down to Florida for an interview. And it worked out well for me because my family had moved from New York to Florida several years prior, so I knew I'd kind of end up here. So I was super lucky, and it was at the time when Disney would fly you down and put you up at a hotel and give you a car and all your meals, and I wasn't going to say no to that. So they rolled out the red carpet for me, and I accepted a position with the African elephants at Disney's Animal Kingdom. And I was lucky enough to be there for 2 births, a lot of cool procedures, and I stayed there for 2 years with the elephants there. And then I moved to Animal Kingdom Lodge, and that's where I really got into hoofstock with that collection.
Okay, very cool. Now, did you interview with Mickey directly, or
No, not at my level.
Okay,
No,
fair.
no.
No, but I am curious. What is it like? Like, how do you interview for an elephant keeper job? Because I just think about how massive elephants are,
Yes.
and is it just like a normal job interview, or do you actually interact with the elephants, or tell me about that.
They provided a job shadow for me the morning of my interview at Disney. They started their day at 5 a.m. So at 5 a.m., I met the other elephant keepers, and I was in my suit and tie and fancy shoes. And I was in the elephant barn mucking out the stalls with the other keepers because I had my interview later that morning.
Yo, that is some great imagery.
Yes.
That's amazing.
So yeah, I could never wear those clothes anywhere else again. But yeah, interviewing for elephant jobs is interesting because the elephant community is very small.
Right.
So if they don't know who you are, they know who you've worked with and who your managers are and whose managers they are, and they certainly know who your elephants are. So it's a very small world. But I knew coming from Syracuse with a very respected elephant program there, I knew my bosses had put a good word in for me, for sure.
That's really cool. That's so important. I love hearing stuff like that. I think so much of, because my industry is the same way. I'm an entertainer, and we all get each other work, help each other out, or if you're a jerk, tell everyone that you're a jerk. And so, that makes a lot of sense. Very cool. And then, so you switched to the lodge. Yes. And you switched to hoofstock.
Correct. Yeah.
And I'm guessing giraffes and what else? Tell me.
So Animal Kingdom Lodge was it is like a luxury room resort, about 1,600 rooms, about 30 acres of animal habitat surrounding the rooms. Giraffe are common to all of the habitats, but other than that, the animals are totally different from two different types of zebra, ostrich, and collie cattle, impala, Thompson's gazelle, kudu, Sitatunga, water buck.
Oh, wow. This is like a real collection. This is real deep. Yeah.
I think we had about 25 species of hoofstock and about 40 species of birds there.
I want to go stay at this lodge now, possibly tonight.
Amazing place, and that's really where I got all of my hoofstock knowledge. With that many animals in the collection, about 300, there was always like a yearly exam that had to happen, or some hoof trimming, or an unfortunate animal that was ill. So we were constantly doing veterinary procedures on the animals. And that's really where you learn a lot about the medical aspect of taking care of hoofstock. But then also we were a breeding facility, so being able to see the baby Nyala and the baby zebra and okapi, Red River hogs, all of that was really great knowledge that I was so glad I was exposed to.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what is it about hoofstock for you personally?
Oh, wow. See, when I first started in college, I was like, I am a bird person. I would never work with a stinky mammal. And I found myself working with elephants. And then I was like, I would never work hoofstock. And then I found myself working for hoofstock over 10 years now. They've certainly grown on me. It's such a variety in terms of the species. When we say hoofstock, you can talk about domestic goats or Red River hogs or giant giraffe or rhinoceros. So it encompasses so much. But I think behavior is most what I like with hoofstock, and training. They are very timid animals for the most part. So training hoofstock like Thompson's gazelle or impala, which are super flighty animals, is a challenge because they are so skittish and they are so alert all the time. So that's always been something that I gravitate towards too. And in my career is training. So those always pose fun training challenges for me, for sure.
Very cool. That makes a lot of sense. I am a big fan of behavior, and I think all that's really neat. Kind of a funny story. So this is all throughout season 1. I spoke to a bunch of people who were bird nerds, and every one of them, it was the same story. Absolutely didn't want to work with birds, worked with birds, fell in love with birds, would never leave birds. Mm-hmm. Now, you are the second person I've talked to in season 2 who has said, I started with birds and got out of there. So I don't know. It's just, I don't know what's happening. The birds are falling off the...
I still enjoy birds. Fair. And no one at the lodge likes to talk about this, but Animal Kingdom Lodge is kind of like a bird facility with some mammals, because birds outnumber the mammals there by number of species and number of individuals. So I did get my bird fix working at Animal Kingdom Lodge. And also here I get my bird fix because we have 4 chickens in my hoofstock collection.
Chickens. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that works. So let's talk about your hoofstock collection here.
Sure.
Just tell me some animals. Let's talk some species, but also some individuals.
Okay, we have our greater one-horned rhino, which is probably our best known representative in our collection. A lot of people come to the zoo just to see him. His name is PJ.
He's really, really gorgeous.
He's a beautiful animal. He knows it.
Zoomies when I was over there.
Oh, good.
Was so good to see.
Good. Yeah, it's fun to watch 4,000 pounds run around like it's nothing. He's a great animal. He turned 10 years old in the beginning of June. And he's a really relaxed rhinoceros. We do interactions with him upwards of an hour a day with the guests. 3 different groups, 20 minutes apiece, can come up. They can interact with him by touching his sides while we talk about PJ, where he came from, and all about greater one-horned rhinos and conservation and their habitat. So he's a real gem for our collection. We also have our 2 male giraffe, Gage and Rafiki.
They are really great. I spent some time with them today.
They are great boys. And again,
Hungry.
Yes, they're always hungry. So a big theme with our collection of hoofstock here is there's a lot of guest interaction with them. So PJ, if you purchase a rhino encounter, you get to meet him. Our giraffes, between 10 and 3 p.m. every day, are at their feeding station. And if they're interested, which they usually are, you can purchase some romaine lettuce and you can feed them right there. And what's interesting about our feeding station is that we don't have a platform. You're not up by their heads. So you're down by their hooves, and you realize just how massive these animals are, that you could walk underneath their belly and not touch it. So they're just giants, and kids and people, everyone really enjoys seeing them from that perspective. Totally.
Yes, this was the 3rd time that I have ever been at the bottom of a giraffe. Mm-hmm. And it was as awe-inspiring as the first time. You get so used to being up with them and seeing their little heads right next to you. And It's like, it's just a totally different perspective. It is so cool to have a giraffe bend over and take food, and you're reaching your hand all the way up and it's still bending over really far because it's a 17-foot animal. Mm-hmm. And it is really stunning. I remember the first time I got to go behind the scenes in a giraffe barn and see a giraffe from that perspective. And I will never forget that feeling. But like I said, it hasn't changed. Every time I'm down there, I'm like, what are you doing up there?
Yes. Even Rafiki, he's our male, one of our males. When he lies down in the yard, and when giraffe lie down, they always keep their head and neck up. He's still 12, 13 feet tall when he's like that. He's still just a massive, massive animal. He's the biggest giraffe by far that I've ever worked with. He's just a really big guy. So that's our giraffe. And then we have some pig species in our collection. We have 2 female warthogs. We have Big Girl and her daughter, Peanut. Mm-hmm.
That's some good naming right there.
Yes. And they're very recognizable from a certain Disney movie. So people always know that they're warthogs. And true to their nature, we keep a big mud wallow in there for them, and they are always wallowing in their mud. They're very alert animals, but pretty relaxed. The boardwalk in front of their exhibits, you can get pretty close to them, and sometimes you can catch them having a nap right there. We go out several times a day. We toss them produce and food to get them up, and people can see them and ask us questions. And then we have a lesser-known pig species that people probably haven't seen before, and those are our peccaries, or Chicoan peccaries. They're an endangered species of peccary. They're found in central South America. There's about 3,000 estimated left in the wild, and the population here in North America is about 100. So we have a male and a female. The male's name is Harvey. He's 5 years old. And then we have Tammy, who's 18 years old. And she's highly recommended to be a mom. She has really good genes that have not been represented very well in the population. But there's 2 things going against their family making. Harvey is a hand-raised male, so he would much rather be next to the keepers than with Tammy. And since Tammy's 18 years old, she really doesn't want anything to do with the hand-raised male in her habitat. They do really well together. They do snuggle up together and whatnot. But when it comes to family planning, they are just not on the same page. But they're a pig species, so they are very smart. We do training with them. They can target train, know how to get on a scale. And Harvey's great because whenever we walk by the exhibit, he comes running out of the bushes, and we can interpret that behavior to the guests and tell them all about this cool animal that they probably never knew existed before.
Now, I noticed something. I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
Hoofstock keepers have been the most of the people that I've talked to. Not all of them, but a lot of them are the ones who are the most animal focused and least guest focused. Mm-hmm. And you seem very guest focused. That important to you to be able to educate and teach people about these species?
Yeah, I think it's a huge part of our job and our responsibility working at a zoo. I mean, these are animals that are representing their cousins out in the wild. And I've always felt that if you get people close enough to an animal to care about that animal, then they might change their behavior and they might, recycle that can or maybe plant a butterfly garden or donate to a conservation fund. Doesn't have to be necessarily for peccaries or for giraffe, but if it does change their behavior for the better, I think that's, we've done our job if we've done that. So I always like to engage with the guests and talk to them. I think it's real important for our career.
Good. Yeah, I agree with you. I try to remind people of that narrative a lot on this podcast. I think that is really important. There's still, I think, so many people who think that zookeepers are zookeepers because y'all can't really handle people and would rather be with animals. And I think we'd all rather be with animals. Like if I had to choose one, I'm choosing the pigs over the humans. But,
of course. Yes. Oh, we all have the same interests here, so we all tolerate each other as coworkers because we're all here for the same reason. But if you're going to work with animals, you got to work well with people too. It goes hand in hand if you're going to do a good job at it, for sure.
So do you feel that, obviously there are some charismatic hoofstock species. Giraffes, everybody loves giraffes. Rhinos, everybody loves rhinos. But, we're talking about pigs.
Yes.
And we're talking about, weird little... A lot of the hoofstock species are almost indistinguishable for a lot of guests.
Correct.
You say Sitatunga and people are like, oh, look, it's a cow.
Yeah, it's a fancy deer. Yeah,
whatever. Yeah, and it's just like, so do you feel that puts those animals at like a disadvantage, or do you think that it can make it more exciting for people to then learn about something they didn't know, or,
That's interesting to say. I think it's always, if you're coming to the zoo, hopefully you're here because you want to learn about animals and be exposed to animals and whatnot. But in my past experience, especially at Disney, the people that were on my tours or staying at the resort or came to the park wanted to be there. They booked that vacation 6 months ago, and they probably thought about it every day since. So I always felt it was obligated, give them the best time that they had there. And like, hey, look at this cool animal. It's a Sitatunga. It lives in the swamp. It's a hoofstock that lives in water, and that's like unheard of for hoofstock because you should not have them in water because it's bad for their feet. And they're adorable and they look like little cartoon characters. So it's always neat to show people something new that they didn't know existed before. And one of my coworkers used to joke, it was like people came to the zoo just for the sexy animals, just for the rhinos and the okapi and the giraffe. But there are really cool animals, and if you take more than 30 seconds and actually watch them and see their cool behaviors and realize, that they're sexually dimorphic, and this male over here is actually doing a mating strut for the female that's hiding in the bushes. It's always cool to point that sort of stuff out to people.
Absolutely. One of my favorite statistics I learned last year is the average zoo guest spends 17 seconds at an exhibit. 17.
I agree with that.
And it kills me. And my favorite animal is the red panda. And
Okay.
so I spend a lot of time with red pandas. And I have had people walk up to, a red panda exhibit and see the panda sleeping and say, man, I've been here 10 times and I have only ever seen this panda sleeping, and then walk away. And 30 seconds later, the panda is up and jogging around and eating bamboo and being adorable and doing what they do. And do they sleep a lot? Yes, they're red pandas. But I'm constantly amazed. Well, yes, you walked up when it was napping and you left. Of course, that's what it was doing.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes people are just like, you feel like they're on a mission and they're just zipping around the zoo. But yeah, you just got to take your time and relax, for sure.
Absolutely. So, what's next for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I've been in the field since about 97, 98. I've got about 20 years under my belt. I've been here at the Central Florida Zoo for almost 6 months now. And I love working at a smaller zoo. I knew going to Disney that it was this giant corporation and whatnot. And I was able to get a lot of experience there, management experience, exposed to a ton of different species to work with, learned about theme park management. But I miss the small town zoo feel. I miss having volunteers and interns and fundraisers, things of that nature. So getting this job here was super exciting for me, and I'm loving every minute of it. Been here 6 months. I have an amazing team, and I've got to learn all of the other teams here. In the future here, I would love to get into upper zoo management. I like leadership theory, practicing all of that, helping people enjoy their jobs, making their jobs better for them. So that's where I see myself going, for sure.
Very cool. Leadership is actually very important to me and something I love talking about on the pod a little bit. So do you have any books or any particular recommendations or just any leadership thoughts that you'd like to share about what it means to be a good leader and how to do that?
I think my leadership person I go to a lot, or that I model myself about, is Simon Sinek.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm a big fan of his, and I've applied a lot of his techniques when I was manager, and got a lot of good results. I read a book and taken a test. It was Strengths Finder. Where you find out kind of what categories that you're really good at. Are you good at learning things or being an extrovert, things of that nature? That's a test you take after you read this book. So I really like to stress and develop people's strengths. So like on our team now, we have certain people that are really good with the education aspect of the job. We have other people that are really good with big projects and using heavy machinery. And I like to foster those sorts of things. And like, hey, you can use a skid steer. Like, you're in charge now. You're in point. Like, what other projects do you want to do with that? So I really believe in fostering people's strengths, and that reinforces such a good job when they do it, because you know that they're going to do a good job. So that's kind of how I like to lead. And I also think it's all about getting trust with the people that you're leading and follow through. Even if it's, hey, I know you mentioned this, I can't act on it right now, but let's revisit it in 2 weeks. Just letting them know that you heard it, you registered it. It's not going to work out now, but we'll go back and do it again. I think that follow through is really important.
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah. The book that I always mention when these conversations come up is Leaders Eat Last.
Yes.
And yeah,
that. Mm-hmm.
Very good, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. That is always the thing I remind myself of. Especially since oftentimes when I'm in a leadership role, I'm out on tour as a musician and it's time for dinner and I'm hungry, and it is a literal reminding myself to eat last, which is, the book goes deeper than that, but so it's kind of nice how sometimes it can literally just be like, all right, go get the guys. Come on.
I know what you mean, but in the end, it's all worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Very cool. What kind of conservation projects are you involved in here?
Right now, with our peccaries, we definitely want to see them reproduce. We don't really think that they are going to, but we would love to. Our greater one-horned rhino, PJ, he is an artist. So we can give him a canvas, and using his upper lip, he can make some abstract art. We also can take imprints of his skin and his skin folds, and we put those in canvases as well. So those also will be sold. And we would donate those to AZAC. And they will sell them for conservation efforts and such. I believe last year the zoo did a lot of fundraising for all of the fires that happened in Australia, and they sent some money down there. In the past, I've been involved with sea turtle conservation, leading night walks along Vero Beach, and all of that money got donated to the Sea Turtle Fund along the East Coast there. So that's always been a big passion of mine too, sea turtles.
That's actually really cool. This morning, before driving across the state, I was at one of the beaches on the Gulf with Moat Marine Lab doing sea turtle nest checks, and we found a new nest and we got to market and all that. Yeah, sea turtles were my OG animal that I fell in love with.
Gotcha.
So, yeah,
okay.
That's very cool. Very cool. Have you ever participated in, or does the zoo participate in Bowling for Rhinos at all?
I believe they do Bowling for Rhinos. I know we have an AZAC chapter here, but being so new and coming out of COVID, I don't know if that's on anyone's radar right now. But AZAC is going through some changes here because we've had some turnover in staff. So things might have slowed down a little bit because of COVID and staff changes. But I know that they are active here for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. I just know with a famous rhino here, it might,
Yes, I'm sure we have. But yeah, being the new guy here, I'm not 100% sure.
Fair. That makes sense. And then were there any other animals that you wanted to mention?
We have our barnyard animals here in our
Okay,
collection.
great, yeah.
So again, guest-focused area. The guests can feed them and they can touch them. We've got 6 goats, a llama, an alpaca, 2 donkeys, and our 4 chickens. So
into these chickens.
We all love our chickens. They're our avian representatives. Yes, we have 4 females. We do get eggs from them, and we give them to our nutrition center. They hard boil them, and then they feed them out to the other animals here at the zoo.
Nice.
So our chickens are in their keep, for sure.
That's great. Yes. And what are their names?
We have Morticia and Wednesday, and then we have Lily and Marilyn.
Okay.
Yes. So Munsters theme and
Yes. Yeah.
yes.
Very cool. It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show, but there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story. Hit me.
I know there's so much poop in my career. Okay, so the worst smelling poop, I would have to say. I have a strong stomach. I don't usually gag or anything, but if anyone's ever worked with Abyssinian ground hornbills, a large kind of turkey-sized bird from Africa, they're strict meat eaters. In my experience, they only poop once a day, and that's first thing in the morning after they jump off their night perch. So they eat mice and rats and all sorts of prepared meat and insects and whatever they find out in the field, snakes, frogs, whatever. So all that cooks in there for like 24 hours. So when they do poop in the morning, it's the most rancid smell that I've ever smelled. And during the twice a year when you would have to get fecal samples from them to submit from the vet, that was always a challenge for me because it's just so pungent and so just gross. So that's probably my gross poop story.
Poop story.
For sure. And then working at Disney, we measured the fecal output of one of our bulled elephants over 24 hours, and it was something like 1,700 pounds of manure that he alone generated. Yeah.
What do you do to move 1,700 pounds of manure?
It's all wheelbarrows and keeper power, and some go in like John Deere Gators or Toros, but it all goes into a giant dumpster that they would take away every other day because we would fill it up.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
All right. So you can check out the Central Florida Zoo on the social medias. On Instagram, it's at Central FL Zoo, or just search for the Central Florida Zoo on Facebook. Also, their website, as you may have guessed, is centralfloridazoo.org. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of my patrons, especially my Red Panda level patrons, PJ Bevan and Laura Shank. Again, you can go to patreon.com/Rossifari to find out how to get your name said in every episode, or at least every episode that I, remember to say your name in. Fortunately, people that are red pandas are pretty willing to accept that I'm not perfect at this, and I appreciate y'all so much. And now, without further ado, the moment you've all been waiting for. The Stydirk! The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Vesley Gross. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.